On the ANC developments. We're very pleased to be joined in studio by our political analyst, Ms. Lebohang Pheko. Lebohang, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Lebohang, what do you read into the latest developments? I mean, we've just read a statement here from President Cyril Ramaphosa, the party president, who says that he knows that the country is in limbo and they will bring a closure to this issue very soon. But this is not closure.
So, I mean, there are a couple of things that emerged. The one is that the two centers of power are clearly not sustainable and not tenable. The scenario where it looks like the tail is wagging the dog seems to be what is unfolding at the moment. Notwithstanding as well that there's a lot of tension within the NEC, within the National Working Committee, and I think the fear that the ANC has is that this is playing into the hands of opposition politics and opposition parties. So if they, for example, decided to join forces, and perhaps call for a motion of no confidence, which they're well within their right to do, and which would be much more dignified than an impeachment, for example, then this would mean that, of course, that they have effectively revolted against themselves, and that this would be it would be obvious that this is a party that is in utter turmoil, which it would appear to be. I mean, it's clear that there's the whole host of balance of power and balance of forces internally, and it remains to be seen which one will wrestle its way to the ascendancy.
You know, Lebohang, when you bring that up, I actually wanted to ask if this party, and I was asking my previous analyst this, is the party being held hostage by its own policies that they're now failing to implement? Do we need a bigger resolution as a country to get to the bottom of this impasse?
So there are a few things that are unfolding. The one is whether or not this, this report, the latest commission of commissions on state capture, is going to yield any real fruits. There's also the suspicion that it may actually draw us far closer to a much wider net and a much wider web of corruption, of misdoing and of misdeeds than has been traditionally been assumed. So I mean, we like to centralize and individualize to an individual, to Mr. Jacob Zuma, and we've now become, the Saxon fold metaphor has become the thing. But I mean, clearly this is a systemic failure. This is an organizational failure. This is an institutional failure. And in as much as he has had a huge part in creating a culture and enabling a culture of rot, he has his own enablers who are strategically positioned across state-owned enterprises, across various government departments, notably now, of course, the Department of Finance. These shuffles, these random cabinet shuffles are not random at all. There's a clear line of how people are being repositioned in order to do his bidding, but that notwithstanding, it's institutional. Yeah. So of course, I think that the fear is that once we get to the bottom of that, other people will be implicated. Of course they will. This is a house of cards. So one would also argue that not only should President Zuma go, perhaps a whole bunch of people need to go with him, a whole new slate.
Lebohang, let's talk further on the strategy to our Zuma, which has been dubbed as the Zexit. What kind of bargaining do you think could be likely going on between the president of the party and President Jacob Zuma to oust him in an amicable manner, if, for lack of a better word? And of course, we've heard again this word of immunity creeping around. Do you think this is some of the discussions that are basically taking place between these two leaders?
But there must be. I think that in this country, the appetite for the culture of no accountability, of immunity, the culture where heads don't roll, where in fact people are rewarded for misdoing and for wrong deeds, and in fact giving larger chunks of the economy to manage or mismanage, is one that there's a very low appetite for. And remember that CR's ticket was on a no corruption, zero tolerance tag. So it will be very difficult for him to give Mr. Zuma a red carpet exit under those circumstances. And I think that his own presidency as party president will be forever compromised if he does so. I think the whole idea, I prefer your word amicable to what we've been hearing, which is a dignified exit, because I don't think dignity is deserved in this instance. I think that as a country, our sensibilities have been battered quite sufficiently. If you travel anywhere in the world, across the continent and beyond, the gravitas and the dignity which South Africa had 5 or 10 years ago has completely diminished. People in Uganda are like, shame, you poor guys, what's happening here? And especially especially because South Africa is geopolitically a very strategic country. Not only are we still the largest economy on the continent, but in terms of the international relations role that we've played in the past, the peace building role, the peacekeeping role, the role in terms of funding regional economic communities and funding funding African diplomacy, developing African diplomacy has completely diminished. So this is not just about what happens within these borders. This is really about the role that South Africa has played in the past. Our role, for example, in the BRICS, it's very much a small s compared to, in terms of those alphabets. We're like some funny little brother, little sister who are trying to run along these big boys and big girls. We look slightly ridiculous because we don't have our own strategic positioning in that. And all of this is down to the fact that our national politics have imploded to the extent where we're not even able to look outwards. And of course, Mr. Zuma just doesn't seem to have a command of the importance of international politics, international diplomacy, let alone how he's managing us here in South Africa.
Lebohang, a very quick one before I let you go. I know I'm out of time. I mean, this historic postponement, the first time ever that a SONA has been postponed. What do you think this does to the country's image? As I mean, we're always labeling ourselves as a growing economy. We've just come back from Davos saying that the country's in business. And now this, I mean, the ratings agencies have been waiting intently to move forward on their decision. And now this.
Well, look, the ratings agencies will have to sit and pause and wait for us to sort out our house. I think that's really the basic. They will have to sit and wait while we sort out our business. We are not governed by ratings agencies. I think that we need to also claim our sovereignty very firmly. And I think that what this does, it actually illustrates that we are able to pause, reflect, and take stock of what needs to be taken stock of. And however uncomfortable that may be to the rest of the world, it must be done. And I think that there was no other way. Going forward with the SONA would have sent, with President Zuma, would have sent all kinds of all of the wrong messages.
Lebohang, thank you so much for your sound analysis here. That is political analyst Lebohang Pheko giving us some of her views, of course, on the Zuma exit saga. This exit, we're going to take a quick ad break and your business.